Welcome to the channel. Today we delve into a tragic and unsettling case from St. Albans, West Virginia, that highlights how a person's life can be taken by someone they trusted most. In this video, we're going to talk about something that happened in West Virginia back in 2009. A few days after Christmas, a man called 911 and said he had just found his daughter. She wasn't showing any signs of life. Her name was Stacy Smith, and she was 32 years old, a mother of two. When police arrived at the house, they noticed something immediately. Written on the wall of Stacy's bedroom was a message that appeared to have been left behind by the person responsible. Stacy Ann Smith was born on September 21, 1977. The people who knew her best described her as outgoing, friendly, and full of energy. In school, she was a cheerleader and had a personality that naturally drew people in. After graduating high school, Stacy met a man named Steven. She fell deeply in love with him and believed he was the person she would spend her life with. In June of 2002, they welcomed a daughter, Mackenzie. Not long after that, Stacy and Steven got married. At the time, they were happy and optimistic about their future together. 4 years later, they had a son named Landon. But as time went on, their relationship began to fall apart. Eventually, they decided to separate. By 2009, Stacy was raising her children on her own. Landon was 3 years old and Mackenzie was 7. They were living in St. Albans, West Virginia. After the breakup, Stacy focused on doing everything she could to give her kids a good life and keep them happy. Around that time, she ran into someone she had known years earlier. His name was Brent. Back in high school, Brent had been interested in Stacy, but she hadn't felt the same way then. Now, years later, they started talking, and that connection slowly turned into a romantic relationship. Stacy had officially divorced Steven, and he was aware that she was moving on. When he came by to pick up the kids for weekends, he would often see Stacy and Brent together. Brent seemed to get along well with the children, and that meant a lot to Stacy. But as the relationship went on, problems started to surface. They argued from time to time, and many of those arguments were fueled by Brent's jealousy. He wanted to know who Stacy was talking to when she was on the phone. He questioned parts of her life that didn't concern him. They broke up more than once, only to get back together after things cooled down. On Christmas Eve in 2009, Stacy moved into a new house with her children. That day, her cousin Timothy and her boyfriend Brent helped her decorate the place for Christmas, trying to make the house feel warm and welcoming for her and the kids. A few days later, on December 28, 2009, Stacy's father, John Paul, tried calling her. She didn't answer. At first, he wasn't too alarmed, but as the hours passed and she still didn't return his calls, he began to worry. Eventually, John decided to check on her himself. He got in his car and drove to the house where Stacy lived with her children. They had only moved in a few days before Christmas, and he just wanted to make sure everything was okay. When he arrived, nothing immediately stood out. The house looked normal. He knocked on the front door and called out Stacy's name. There was no response. The door was locked. John looked through a window and saw Stacy's 3-year-old son, Landon, inside. He managed to get the boy's attention. When Landon came closer, John asked where his mom was. Landon said she was asleep. That answer didn't sit right with him. Stacy wasn't a deep sleeper, and John knew she would have heard the knocking. He asked Landon to open the door and talked him through how to unlock it. Once inside, John told Landon to sit in the living room while he went to check on Stacy. When he stepped into the kitchen, he found his daughter lying on the floor. It was immediately clear she was gone. There was blood throughout the kitchen and in Stacy's bedroom. John called 911 right away and asked for help. Police arrived and searched the house to make sure no one else was still inside. From the beginning, it was clear that Stacy's death was not an accident. She had been killed by a stab wound to the neck. As investigators looked around the home, one detail quickly stood out. Written on one of the walls was a short message that accused Stacy of being unfaithful. It was only 2 words. The first was cheating. The second started with the letter W. Another detail was especially difficult to process. Landon had spent most of the day alone in the house with his mother's body. Investigators later found the child's bloody footprints on the floor near Stacy. It suggested that he had walked over to her, likely trying to wake her up. At just 3 years old, he wouldn't have understood that she wasn't sleeping. Police collected everything they thought might matter, including cigarette butts and beer cans that could potentially contain DNA. But more than anything else, the writing on the wall became a major focus of the investigation. The next step was figuring out who had written the message on the wall. From the beginning, investigators believed jealousy played a role. The level of violence also suggested that this wasn't random. It felt personal, possibly driven by anger or a desire to get back at her. Police believe the person responsible was someone Stacy knew and trusted. There were no signs of forced entry, which suggested she had let this person into her home. Several important items were missing. Stacy's car and her car keys were gone. Her phone and the weapon used in the attack were also nowhere to be found. Investigators alerted patrol officers to be on the lookout for her vehicle, thinking it may have been used to leave the scene. Stacy's death was devastating for her family, especially for her children, who now had to be told that their mother was never coming back. Psychologists later spoke with Landon to see if he had noticed anything unusual or seen the person who hurt his mother, but he couldn't provide much information. He hadn't witnessed the attack. When he woke up, he saw his mother on the floor and believed she was sleeping. He walked over and tried to wake her, not realizing what had happened. Early on, investigators focused on the idea that the person responsible was someone who believed Stacy had been unfaithful. At that stage of the investigation, 2 people stood out as possible suspects: Stacy's boyfriend, Brent, and her ex-husband, Stephen. Police considered whether Stephen still had feelings for Stacy and may have been upset that she had moved on after their divorce. At the same time, Brent's jealousy was well known. Many people close to Stacy were aware of it. When investigators work a case like this, they look at every possible angle, even ones that don't seem likely at first. They also wanted to know if there was anyone else in Stacy's life, someone her family and friends didn't know about. Stacy was young, attractive, and worked as a doctor's assistant, so it wasn't unusual that people noticed her. While patrol officers searched the area for Stacy's missing car, detectives spoke with her family. After those conversations, Brent quickly became the main suspect. Family and friends described him as extremely jealous. He often became angry when he thought Stacy was talking to other men. He had a short temper and could lose control over small things. Because of that, Stacy had ended their relationship more than once. All of this made Brent an obvious person of interest, so detectives decided to track him down and talk to him. They wanted to know where he was when Stacy died, whether he had any involvement, and how he would respond to those questions. Finding him wasn't difficult. Brett was staying at his country house. Before going there, investigators obtained a search warrant. When they arrived, Brent was in his garage. He appeared nervous when he saw the officers, though that alone didn't mean much. Most people would be uneasy in that situation. Detectives told Brent they had a warrant to search his property and explained that they were investigating the death of Stacy Smith. When he heard the news, Brent seemed genuinely shocked. He appeared overwhelmed and emotional. Still, investigators had to consider whether this reaction was real or just an act. Brent was taken to the police station for questioning. During the interview, his statements only added to the officers' concerns. He admitted that his relationship with Stacy had been unstable and that they argued often. According to him, their last argument happened the day before she died. Brent told investigators that Stacy had cheated on him with one of his friends, and that even though it happened sometime earlier, it had seriously damaged their relationship. He said that on December 27th, after another argument, he went home. A few hours later, once things had cooled off, he returned to Stacy's house. He claimed they talked calmly in her bedroom and were intimate. Brent said he left around 2 a.m. At the time, Stacy's son Landon and her cousin Timothy were both in the house and asleep. According to Brent, there were no problems between him and Stacy when he left. He said he went home and didn't know anything had happened to Stacy until police contacted him. The problem was that no one could back up his timeline. With no clear alibi, investigators had reason to question his story. They asked Brent if he would be willing to take a polygraph test to help clear things up. After some hesitation, Brent agreed. He didn't want to remain on the suspect list. He completed the test without any issues. And at first, police considered removing him as a suspect. But during the test, officers noticed something small but concerning: a red spot on Brent's shirt that looked like dried blood. Brent explained that he had injured himself slightly the day before and said the mark on his shirt was his own blood. Investigators told him that only lab testing could confirm that. To check Brent's story, detectives wanted to speak with Stacy's cousin, Timothy. If Brent was telling the truth, Timothy would have been the last person to see Stacy alive. But there was a problem. No one could find him. After the family learned about Stacy's death, Timothy disappeared. He wasn't answering his phone, and no one knew where he had gone. Both the family and the police were worried. There were a few possibilities. Timothy had struggled with illegal substances in the past, which raised concerns that he might have gotten into trouble. Maybe he owed someone money. Maybe someone had gone after him and things escalated. That idea became another angle investigators had to consider. As mentioned earlier, Stacy's ex-husband, Stephen, was also looked at closely. Police questioned whether he might have been angry about Stacy moving on with Brent, possibly even before the divorce was final. They didn't live together anymore, but investigators considered whether resentment or jealousy could still have been there. There was also the question of the children. Stephen only saw them on weekends. Investigators had to consider whether he might have wanted full custody and whether that could have played a role. They also wondered if he could have left the message on the wall as part of that anger. When Stephen came in for questioning, he was calm and cooperative. He denied having anything to do with Stacy's death and said he would never harm the mother of his children. According to him, he and Stacy were not hostile toward each other after the divorce. Stephen shared the same belief as Stacy's family. He thought Brent was responsible. He told investigators that Stacy and Brent's relationship had been unstable for a long time. Stephen also explained where he was on the night of the crime. Police were able to verify his alibi, and he was removed from the list of suspects. Meanwhile, as investigators continued searching for Stacy's missing car, they discovered something unexpected. The vehicle wasn't registered to Stacy at all. It belonged to her boss, Dr. William Cousteau. That raised new questions. It suggested there may have been another man in Stacy's life, someone investigators hadn't seriously considered yet. As the investigation went on, police learned that Stacy had been involved in a romantic relationship with her boss. Several coworkers said Stacy and Dr. Cousteau were very close, and at some point, he had given her a car. That immediately gave investigators another possible suspect. They wondered if Dr. Cousteau had found out about Stacy's relationship with Brent, and if that discovery caused tension between them. Maybe the car wasn't just a gift anymore. Maybe it had become a point of conflict. With that in mind, detectives began looking into Dr. Cousteau, but he wasn't hiding or avoiding anyone. He was living his life as usual. Once he learned about Stacy's death and heard that police wanted to speak with him, William Cousteau went to the police station on his own. During questioning, he was open with investigators. He admitted that he and Stacy had been in an intimate relationship and confirmed that he was the one who gave her the car. According to him, they had been together for several years before her death, and the relationship was mutual. He said he helped her financially and supported her when she was going through difficult moments. Cassau denied having anything to do with the crime. He told police he had no reason to hurt Stacy. He also explained where he was on the night she was killed. His alibi checked out, and investigators were able to rule him out as a suspect. That left police with fewer answers than before. If it wasn't Cassau, then who had written the message on the wall? Who was angry enough to leave something like that behind? And was there someone else in Stacy's life that investigators hadn't uncovered yet? While those questions remained, police used GPS data to track down Stacy's missing car. It had been sitting in a deserted parking lot about 5 miles from her house the entire time. Investigators believed the vehicle could be an important piece of the puzzle. Patrol officers went to the location and the car was towed to the police lot for a full examination. Inside, they found Stacy's credit cards and some personal belongings, but there was no knife and no clear evidence that directly pointed to who had committed the crime. Then, the case took another turn. As police continued looking into Timothy, Stacy's missing cousin, they uncovered details from his past that raised serious concerns. Records showed that he had previous run-ins with the law and had something he may have wanted to hide. Timothy had been convicted in the past for theft and a sexual offense. According to court records, he had been accused of molesting a girl. Timothy later claimed that the girl had lied about her age and that he believed she was legally an adult. Even so, he served time in prison for the offense. He was also required to register as a sex offender, but he never did. 2 days after Stacy's death, Timothy Ray Sutherland contacted police and told them he was staying at a local motel. He insisted he had nothing to do with Stacy's murder. Because he had failed to register as a sex offender, a warrant had already been issued for his arrest. By the time officers arrived at the motel, Timothy was gone. Police did find a woman in the room, someone Timothy had been involved with. She told officers that he was hiding in an abandoned trailer on the other side of town. Later that same day, December 30th, 2009, Timothy was arrested and taken in for questioning. During the interview, investigators wanted to confirm Brent's claim that Timothy had been at the house with Stacy and her son that night. Timothy admitted that he was there. He also told police that he believed Brent was responsible for Stacy's death. According to Timothy, Brent wasn't a good person. He said Brent and Stacy argued constantly and that on the day she was killed, they had fought right in front of him. Timothy said he never understood why Stacy stayed with Brent. In his view, Brent didn't truly love her and didn't treat her with respect. When investigators asked why he had run instead of calling for help, Timothy said he panicked. He believed police would arrest him once they realized he hadn't registered as a sex offender. In short, Timothy placed the blame squarely on Brent, but that story began to fall apart once lab results came back. The dried blood found on Brent's shirt turned out to be his own, not Stacy's. Investigators couldn't find any physical evidence tying Brent to the crime. Once again, the list of suspects grew smaller. Brent maintained that when he left the house, only Stacy, Timothy, and 3-year-old Landon were there. Landon was obviously not capable of committing the crime or writing the message on the wall that left Timothy. Investigators noticed dried blood stains on Timothy's jeans. All of his clothing was sent to the lab for testing. Even then, Timothy continued to insist that Brent was the one who killed Stacy. Investigators continued to press Timothy, and eventually he stopped denying it and told them what really happened. He said he thought Stacy was making bad choices. In his words, she let Brent yell at her, forgave him every time, and kept going back to him. On the night before her death, Timothy said they argued right in front of him. Brent left the house, but a few hours later he came back. Timothy said he was angry when he saw Stacy forgive Brent again and take him into her bedroom. He knew what that meant, and it made him furious. After Brent left for the second time, Timothy went into Stacy's bedroom to talk to her. What happened next is laid out in court records without unnecessary detail. According to those records, in 2009, Timothy Sutherland was temporarily living at his cousin Stacy Smith's home in St. Albans, West Virginia. In the early morning hours of December 28, 2009, he and Stacy got into an argument in her bedroom. During the argument, Timothy told her that her boyfriend didn't treat her properly. Stacy responded by calling him a junkie. That comment set him off. Timothy left the bedroom and went into the kitchen where he smoked a cigarette. A few minutes later, he returned to the bedroom holding a butcher knife. Stacy was lying on the bed when he stabbed her on the right side of her neck, killing her. Before leaving the house, Timothy took Stacy's cell phone, her credit cards, some cash, and her car keys. He also wrote the words "Cheating B" on a wall in the living room. Timothy told investigators that after he stabbed Stacy, she was still able to get out of bed and walk a short distance. At the time, her son was asleep in another room and her daughter was staying overnight with friends. As he described what happened, Timothy broke down. He was crying during the interview and appeared genuinely remorseful. He also told police where he had gotten rid of the knife. He said he threw it out of the car window not far from Stacy's house. Police later recovered the knife from the exact location he described. Lab testing confirmed that Stacy's blood was found on Timothy's jeans. That evidence was enough for prosecutors to move forward with charges. When investigators asked why he wrote those words on the wall, Timothy said he wanted Stacy's boyfriend to become a suspect. Everyone knew that Stacy and Brent argued often, and Timothy wanted it to look like Brent had killed her out of jealousy. But Brent believed there was more to it than that. He felt that Timothy was in love with his cousin and jealous of her. According to Brent, Timothy sat in an armchair in the living room that night and could hear everything happening between him and Stacy in the bedroom. It's possible that jealousy built up until he lost control and did something that couldn't be undone. Police also considered whether Timothy might have tried to make a move on Stacy after Brent left. That idea was explored, but there was no evidence to support it. In the end, only 2 people truly knew what happened that night, and one of them was gone. Even though Timothy Sutherland confessed during questioning, he pleaded not guilty at his first court appearance in 2010. By then, investigators and prosecutors believed they had more than enough evidence to convict him. The main question at trial was how the jury would interpret his actions. Prosecutors argued that the killing was planned. The defense claimed it happened in a moment of intense emotion. But one detail stood out. After arguing with Stacy, Timothy left her bedroom, went into the kitchen, smoked a cigarette, picked up a knife, and then returned. That sequence suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. On March 18, 2011, Timothy Ray Sutherland was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2013, he attempted to appeal the verdict, but the conviction was upheld. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant.